Hey, welcome back, everyone. My name is Rick Harrison with MVP Realty down here in Southwest Florida. And in today's Southwest Florida housing market update, I've got a lot of information to cover. I've missed the last 3 weeks with data and everything that was going on with Hurricane Ian. So sorry about that. Thank you to those of you who did reach out to me and ask how everything was going. I really appreciate that in the comments, and those of you who reached out to me directly. We did all right here, so everything was good. We had some minor damage, but I do know clients and friends who lost everything. So it was devastating to see, but it was pretty impressive and amazing to see how quickly all of the workers got everything up and running so quickly. I know there were some stories out there that people were upset about how slow things were, but I was really impressed with how much damage was done here, and it's pretty devastating to see some of the areas, but we're all okay. We made it through. Not everyone, unfortunately, but like I said, it was pretty impressive to see all the work and all the people come together for what had happened down here. But like I said, I got 3 weeks worth of data to cover this week. I am going to go over all 3 weeks, so let's not even waste any more time. Let's get right into that data. All right, so start off with the southern part of Southwest Florida, as I usually do. This is going back 2 weeks ago. So the first card is going to be 2 weeks ago to last week, and then we're going to compare last week to this week as far as inventory. We did see some pretty big swings, obviously, with the hurricane's destruction. 2 weeks ago, listings were at 646. Then last week, they went down to 403. So that was a decrease of over 200 there, down 38%. Solds went from 567 to 386. Again, obviously down with everything that happened and people being, unable to really do much for 2 weeks. Pendings went from 707 to 547. 457. That was down 36%. Now, as last week compared to this week, new listings went from 403 last week to 661 this week. So it's starting to get back close to what the inventory was at pre-Ian. Solds went from 386 to 604. That's up 56%. Again, very similar readings to where we were before the hurricane. And then pendings also 457 up to 617. That's up 35%. Also, we did see price decreases kick back up, not quite to where they were before the hurricane, but still quite a bit up from where we were last week. Moving into the inventory. So this is before the hurricane actually hit. I did have this all set up. We ended up leaving and evacuating the area. So I wasn't able to actually get this video up, but this was the card from that week. We had single families that week before actually the day before the storm came. The single families were at 5060 and they had gone up to 5107. So we saw a nice gain there of 47. Condos, same situation, 2062 before the week before the hurricane, and then that week of the hurricane went up to 2096. So that was a gain of 34. We went from a gain of 83 the previous week to a gain of 81 that week of the hurricane. Multifamilies pretty much really stayed the same, just decreased 1. And then foreclosures really didn't gain much. We gained 2 there, but still overall a gain. Now, this is last week's market update. I did have it all set up, and then I've been getting swamped with real estate, calls, people asking me to, look at their homes to see what they're worth now. Single families went from 5107 to 4781. That was a loss of 326 units. So you can see what happened after the hurricane. We lost a lot of inventory. Condos went from 2096 to 1978. That was another loss of 118. We had a net gain the previous week of 81, a net loss of 444 the week after the hurricane. Multifamilies also went down 162 to 147. That was a loss of 15. Foreclosures went from 52 to 48. That was a loss of 4. Now, this is the latest inventory readings. This is last week compared to this week. We did see some gains again. And the inventory levels are getting back up to where they were before the hurricane. So last week we had 5781. That was a couple weeks ago. We went up to 4819. So we had an actual gain of 38 there. And then for the condos went from 1978 to 1994. There was a gain of 16. So we went from a net loss of 444 to a net gain of 54. Multifamilies went from 147 down to 136, loss of 11, and foreclosures did not change at all for the southern part of Southwest Florida. Now moving into the northern part of Southwest Florida, new listings went from 1758 to 1388, so that was down 22% pre hurricane. So the Ian. So that was down. I'm sorry, this was right after Ian. I'm sorry. So that went down 22% right after the hurricane. Solds went from 1372 to 1525. So that was up. That's just closing. So again, that's a lagging indicator what had already happened. And then pendings 1791 to 1289. So we lost a ton of a ton of demand during that week, obviously. So this is last week compared to 2 weeks ago compared to last week. New listings went from 1388 up to 1502. That's up 8%. Solds went from 1525 to 1601. That was up 2%. And pendings went from 1289 up to 1495. That was up 15%. So we did see some nice gains back. Again, getting pretty close to pre-hurricane levels. Now, when we go into the inventory, this is 1 week compared to the other 2 weeks. So pre-Ian, pre-hurricane, we were at 4147 that week before. And then that very week, we actually gained 151 up to 4298 units in that northern part of Southwest Florida. Condos went from 1392 up to 1408, so another gain. So we actually had a pretty large gain that week right before the up to 167. Multifamilies, sort of a change again, just down. And then foreclosures did rise 5, a modest amount. Now, this is 2 weeks ago compared to last week. So this is last week's comparison. Single families went from 4298 to 3952. So as you can see, again, the same story. Right after the hurricane, we lost 346 units. Condos went from 1408 to 1364, another loss. So we had a net gain of 167 the previous week. And then right after the hurricane, we had a net loss of 390 units. We also had a net loss of 8 in multifamilies, and foreclosures did not change. Now, this is the latest update. This is this week compared to last week. We did see some gains overall. 3952 last week, 3959 this week. That's up 7. 1364 for condos, 1392 this week, up 28. So we had a net gain of 35 this week compared to a net loss of 390 last week. So we're still not quite back to the inventory levels that we saw before the hurricane, but we did make some modest gains, and that's always good news, especially since considering the fact that a lot of areas are still devastated. I'm actually going to be going down to an area tomorrow in south part of Fort Myers. The entire area, the entire community was wiped out. They had really about 6 feet of flooding in their homes. So most of the homes are pretty much gutted at this point. And the entire streets, both sides, are full of all of the stuff from not only the debris from inside the homes, but also all their personal belongings. Multifamilies went from 58 to 59, up 1. And then foreclosures went from 38 to 42. That's up 4. So just going into now the interest rates. So this is before Ian compared to now. We just pretty much have gained a 0.5 percentage point in interest rates. So keeping that in mind, for those of you who maybe were pre-approved before interest rates got so high, you may consider talking to your lender and looking at what you're still approved for, because with that increase in interest rates, unless you're locked in already, those interest rates are going to have a major effect on how much you can afford, to the tune of pretty close to $50,000 in purchase power. So that 0.5 percentage point, could be taking quite a bit off of the home that you can afford. So we went from 6.433 to 6.869, according to NerdWallet, which takes its data from Zillow. And then Bankrate had us going from 6.55 to 7% now. So again, something to consider with, what your purchasing power is, talking to your lender. Mortgage applications. So I do have 2 slides for this, just to give you an idea of how much things have changed in the last couple of weeks. Applications decreased 14.2% last week. So that's a huge decrease in the amount of people, the amount of demand that's out there right now, which is going to continued driving down prices across the U.S. On the other side of that coin, right now, with our inventory being kind of demolished in Southwest Florida a bit, I don't think it's going to have as much of an effect around here, at least in the short term. But as you can see, refinancings had decreased, FHAs increased slightly, VAs decreased, and there was no change in USDAs last week. And then as far as this week, applications decreased again. So overall, 16% decrease over the last 2 weeks. FHAs are increasing again, which just because of the fact that interest rates are increasing, more people are switching over to FHAs versus conventional. One of the things I did want to kind of give you an idea about what's going on, what's the scoop, what's up with Southwest Florida for those of you who aren't in the area directly. First of all, thousands of homes were damaged, but hundreds of homes were just completely destroyed. Like, they're gone. There's nothing left but the foundations. On top of that, stat that we're all finding out about now, only about 20% of homes had flood insurance. I've been asked this question quite a bit lately. You don't need to have flood insurance if you own the home. The only reason you would need to have flood insurance absolutely would be if you have it financed or you have a mortgage on it. They do require flood insurance in certain areas. But with that being said, this was a once in a 500-year storm. The flooding from the surge actually came into areas that weren't considered flood zones. So a lot of people did not have flood insurance and completely lost all of it. In addition to that, the flood insurance doesn't cover everything. It doesn't cover personal belongings if you don't have that. It also won't even cover the full value of the homes in most cases, because most people don't take out the full value premiums for insuring the entire value of the home, because you don't expect for that, kind of situation to come up. So in addition to that, we've been talking about this for months now. Insurance companies have already been fleeing the states, especially Southwest Florida. I think this is going to be a pretty big issue. It already is an issue, but it's going to become a bigger issue. A lot of policies are now being turned over to Citizens, which is the state-owned insurance company. The state is not in the, they're not in the insurance business, but unfortunately, that's where most people are having to turn. So, in addition to that, for those who built on Fort Myers Beach or who were on Fort Myers Beach and who were grandfathered in with structures that really weren't up to today's codes, the rebuilding process is going to be much more expensive to replace those homes that had been wiped away, because the codes now tell most homeowners that you have to have certain structures up a certain amount. I believe it was 11 feet before, but in some cases they're saying that we had 20-foot surges in certain parts of the beach. So that 11-foot rise could very well change in the very near future as far as codes go for the beach area. In addition to that, downtown Fort Myers, which is up the Caloosahatchee River, a lot of that also flooded quite a bit. You've probably seen some of the photos online or on the news of boats and some yachts and shrimp boats that were completely washed on shore. There are still boats that are lodged in between buildings in downtown Fort Myers. So that was quite the sight to see. But fortunately, a lot of the downtown Fort Myers areas and businesses are actually opened up again. They're already opened up. They're taking people and customers. So that's good news. They were pretty easily, they recovered pretty quickly. But with all this happening, I think at least in the short term in our area, we're going to see rent prices probably continue increasing. Maybe not quite as much as they have over the last 2 years, but I think that will start to go up and has already gone up a bit, just because there are a lot of people who moved into the area expecting to have a home. Some of those homes have been wiped away. And then those who had homes, a lot of their homes have also been, either destroyed or completely damaged to the point where they're needing to rent as well. So there's a huge demand right now for rent. Rentals are not easy to find, especially, in the under 2,000 range. It's pretty tough to find anything under $2,000 for rentals, at least for longer term rentals. With that, however, I think rental and housing, the inventory, although it's decreased right now, I do think just based on historical numbers, usually after a major hurricane or something like this, we do see a lot of people leave the area. Some people are not going to want to rebuild. They're just, they're at that age where they don't want to do it again. I've already had plenty of people talk to me about that. So I think we're going to see, it's probably going to take a few months, but we're going to see quite a bit of inventory come to market. In addition to that, there probably will be a lot of lots in pretty prestigious and, in demand areas, especially near the beach. I think we'll be seeing quite a bit of that come to market. But we will have to see. There's a lot going on in the economy right now, too. I do plan to cover that as well. I've just been swamped with work. So I hope you all got some information out of this. Please feel free if you have questions about what's going on. If you have questions about your situation as far as whether you should move down here, things like that, what's going on with interest rates, please feel free to reach out to me. My number, you can text me or call me directly. My number is 239-310-5478. If you did get value out of this, please leave a like. And if you know anybody who could use this information, share it. I will have more information in the links in the description for those of you who are looking for kind of next steps if you do have any damage to your properties. So appreciate you all tuning in, and I will have another broadcast coming up next week. All right. Thanks, guys.